Yesterday, we put out 2 Dumb Decisions videos. In a Dumb Decisions doubleheader, we talked about the Eagles-Vikings game from Thursday night and a Giants-Cardinals game from 1974 since the two teams are playing each other this Sunday. Missed any of the action? Click the card in the upper right corner to watch the videos. And now, on with our feature presentation. Last year, I made a video about a game between these two teams right here, an AFC battle from the 1998 season between the New York Jets and the Tennessee Oilers. If you want to watch the full story and watch me go in-depth about the issue, you can do so by clicking the card in the upper right corner. However, to make a long story short, the Jets were supposed to wear special decals for their game against the Oilers, but they were unable to do so. The reason why? The decals got stolen. Someone obtained the decals from the team hotel, and when the Jets arrived at the stadium that day, they realized that they wouldn't be able to wear what they were supposed to. Sure, it's just a decal, but it still throws a wrench in your plans. But how about not a decal, but rather an entire uniform? How about going on the road to play in a game and realizing once you get there that you don't even have any uniforms to speak of? If I had a nickel for every time I did a video about a part of a team's uniform getting stolen before a game, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it's happened twice. Because for this team right here, that's exactly what happened to them. And you're not going to believe the bizarre nature of this story. The Chicago Bears, to close out the 1980 season, played the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in an NFC Central rivalry game and in a nationally televised game on CBS. And when they arrived at the stadium, they had no idea if they would even be able to play the game because they had no jerseys and no pants to speak of. Tampa Stadium security was like my girlfriend who lives in Canada. Completely non-existent. Because this is the story behind the craziest uniform controversy in Chicago Bears history, and without a doubt, the most bizarre uniform controversy of the entire 1980 NFL season. Before I talk about the actual incident in question and how the thieves did what they did, we need some context to understand the importance of this game and how the game itself went. It's December 20th, 1980. It's the final week of the NFL season, week 16. And we've got a nationally televised Saturday battle down in Florida between the Chicago Bears and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Oddly enough, this is the second meeting of the season between the teams that was nationally televised, as when the teams met in Chicago back in week 5, the game was a Monday Night Football game on ABC. It's not often that both matchups are in front of the entire country, although it has happened before. The Giants and Cowboys in 2011 playing each other comes to mind. Unfortunately, this game doesn't mean a whole lot on the standings or the playoff picture. In fact, it means just about nothing. The Bears and Buccaneers both made the playoffs in 1979, and there were high hopes for both teams entering the 1980 campaign. But this nationally televised Saturday game that maybe at the start of the season would be a national game for the division crown was anything but that, as the Bears entered with a not-so-nice 6-9 record, while the Buccaneers entered with a 5-9-1 record. There's not a lot to play for in this one, outside of pride, beating your rivals, and ending the season on the right foot. However, unlike the Monday Night Football game earlier in the season, which was a snooze fest, and which the Bears dominated and won by a final score of 23-0, this one was a much more competitive game, and was a true back-and-forth affair. Having said that, much like the first meeting, the Bears still came out on top in this one, taking it by a final score of 14-13. Even though the Bears finished the season with a losing record, considering the fact that they started 4-6, the fact that they ended the season winning 3 of their final 4 games, with the wins being against divisional rivals, and with one of the wins being a 61-7 drubbing against the Packers, and one of them being this game right here in front of a national audience, at least they could take solace in the fact that they ended the season on a super high note. This game was all about Chicago's ferocious defense. This was a Chicago team that ended the season 4th in the league in total defense, and this was yet another shining example of that, as after Tampa got off to a hot start and scored 10 points midway through the first quarter, The Bucs could only muster up 3 more points the rest of the way. The Bears forced a whopping 5 turnovers, including 2 critical fumbles down by the red zone, and 1 fumble with the Bucs pinned inside their own 5-yard line, which set the Bears up with fantastic field position. Of course, offensively, it always helps when you've got Walter Payton on your side, as he had yet another fantastic day at the office, picking up 130 yards on the ground on nearly 4.5 yards per carry, and another 25 yards receiving, netting roughly half of Chicago's total yardage on the day. No, the Bears as a team did not have a great offensive performance when you only score 14 points, and 7 of them came because he got gifted the ball at the 5-yard line. It's not exactly ideal, especially when your quarterback, Vince Evans, throws 2 picks, completes less than 50% of his passes, and has a passer rating of just 35.8, which is worse than if he did nothing but spike the ball into the ground on every single play. But with the way Chicago's defense came to bat, it didn't matter. It didn't need to be. The Bears won at the end of the day, and at least got to go into the offseason and the holiday season on a high note. At least, they got to do that on the field. Because off the field, it was an entirely different story. The fact that the Bears were even able to play this game is kind of a Christmas miracle in itself. Because you see, Tampa Stadium was not exactly the most secure venue in the world. The game took place on Saturday, December 20th. On Friday, December 19th, the night before the game, some thieves decided that this was a great opportunity to do a little holiday shopping, if you know what I mean. Now, the stadium was under surveillance all the time. The security company in charge of operations, SecureX, had a deal where they would patrol the stadium, so it's not as though the stadium was completely unguarded. But when security was not looking, thieves found a way to get into the stadium through the air vents. If you've ever seen those TV shows and movies where people sneak through the air vents to try and spy on someone or gain access to a building, and wonder if that's unrealistic, because how could you possibly fit in that? Well, apparently not, because in 1980, that's exactly what happened here. As Rick Naif, the Tampa Sports Authority Director of Operations, said on the strategy executed by the thieves, they came in through a return air duct and cut the grating. We don't know when it happened, but they left a lot of calling cards. It looks like they were probably surprised, or at least scared. Yeah, I bet they were surprised. I bet they were surprised that they could actually break into a stadium, and with some bolt cutters to get into where the equipment was being stored, get this grand plan of theirs to work. I bet they were surprised that they were literally in the stadium for 2 hours, and not once were they caught. Seriously, the thieves knew the patrol schedule, knew the layout of the stadium, knew when the guards would be in the area and when they likely wouldn't be, and over a 2-hour period, executed this near-flawless game plan. This was not their first rodeo. They left some evidence behind, but from everything I could find, the thieves were never identified. There were no suspects, at least not initially, and I couldn't find any follow-up reports that said they ever caught the guys or got arrested or anything like that. They got off completely scot-free. It seems absurd, but security back in the early 80s was something else. If a man could rob a stadium in the middle of a playoff game, as was the case during the Bengals-Bills divisional round game during the 1981 season at Riverfront Stadium, which you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner, then I suppose anything is possible. Because the thieves here made out like bandits. When their spree was done, and they were finished raiding the Bears' locker room, they made out with 45 jerseys, 1 from every player, 15 pants, 6 caps, 3 jackets, and just for good measure, an autographed football. Even though the equipment arrived at the stadium Friday night, by Saturday morning, on the day of the game, it was gone. And there are various estimates as to how much damage the thieves actually caused in terms of the stolen goods. The Tampa Sports Authority estimated this at somewhere around $3,000, while the Bears said that this was somewhere in the ballpark of $6,000, double what the Tampa Sports Authority said. If the Tampa Sports Authority has the correct figure, then this was somewhere in the ballpark of $11,000 in today's money. If the Bears have the correct figure, then this was more than $22,000. Either way, a pretty hefty sum of money, and a pretty good haul for the bandits in question. As Tampa Police Lieutenant M.W. Campbell said on this incident, it looked like somebody knew exactly what they were after. So that raises the question. If the uniforms got stolen, how did the Bears end up playing this game? I mean, they clearly have their own uniforms. How did they do it? Well, fortunately for them, they had a second set of uniforms. They had to get them to Tampa immediately. When equipment manager Ray Early arrived at the stadium at 10 a.m., 6 hours before game time, and about 3 hours before the team was going to get there and warm up, and he realized that everything was gone, he called an audible and got a backup pair just in time for everyone, so that when the players arrived, they had no idea about the drama that happened overnight. If not for some quick thinking from Early, they'd be completely screwed, especially since this was a road game. To be honest, I have no idea what the protocol would even be in a situation like this, where a team has no uniform whatsoever to play with. But if that was the case, then this game would definitely be remembered more than 40 years later, instead of today, where no one watching the broadcast had any idea about the saga and the drama behind the uniforms in question. Oddly enough, this wasn't even the first time that a break-in happened with uniforms at Tampa Stadium. On November 25, 1972, when the University of Tampa played Vanderbilt, and Tampa won that game 30-7, thieves got into the Vanderbilt locker room and stole their jerseys. But this was definitely the most notable instance of it. At least in this instance, the crisis of not having any uniforms to speak of was averted. But if you think that's the end of our story, oh no. Because it somehow gets even crazier. You would think after all of this, where thieves could steal an entire set of uniforms the night before a game, and almost cause an unprecedented scenario in the NFL, barring some quick thinking from the Bears equipment manager, that the security company would be done. You would think that this security company would get axed, seeing as they had one job, which was to provide security for Tampa Stadium, and they somehow could not do that. However, and this is absolutely mind-blowing, 2 days later, I kid you not, they got a contract extension. Seriously. Securix got another contract for security at Tampa Stadium, with the Tampa Sports Authority paying them $4.25 an hour for stadium events and $160 per month to patrol the stadium. They won the bid because it was the cheapest bid, and clearly not on merit, since obviously, they failed the most important aspect of security. I mean, sure, you're paying about $5 a day to patrol the stadium, but are they really patrolling the stadium if they allow this to happen? Imagine being so bad at your job that you get a contract extension. I mean, that's just laughable. I don't even know what to say to that. Talk about failing upwards. What's crazy is that this isn't even the first time I've done a video about poor security taking place at Tampa Stadium during the 1980s prior to a big NFL game. A while ago, somewhere around 3 years ago, I did a video about Super Bowl 18 between Washington and Los Angeles, where a man hopped the fence and snuck a gun into the stadium. You can learn more about that bizarre incident by clicking the card in the upper right corner. Between that incident at the Super Bowl and whatever was taking place between these two teams behind me, I have no clue what was taking place at Tampa Stadium back then, because it truly was the wild, wild west out there. I think a lot of people probably thought, and understandably so, that entering this battle that you've been watching this whole time between the Chicago Bears and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, that there wouldn't be a ton of drama. I mean, it's a game between two teams with losing records that have nothing to play for. What could possibly happen? Well, more than 4 decades later, we know our answer. Because this game was remembered not for what happened on the field, but rather what happened off the field. You might not have been able to tell during the broadcast, because it seemed pretty normal. But in the aftermath, oh, you would know. You would absolutely know. Because for the final game of the 1980 season, the Chicago Bears were dangerously close to being bare. Get your official Jaguar Gator 9 merchandise by going to jj9shop.com, and be sure to like and subscribe, as it really helps the channel out a lot. Join me every Wednesday night where we'll play NFL Trivia for cash prizes at 9 p.m. Eastern over on Twitch. To learn more about the history of college football, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 8. To learn more about the history of Major League Baseball, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 7. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.